Hello, fellow humans. This is M and V, and we are discussing exclusions to certain communities today. So, kind of to break that down, I think the best way to do it is to give you an example. I am living in Japan right now. Can't find me. It's okay. I'm okay telling you about where I'm living. But when I went to one of the places in Japan, there was this restaurant or bar that said no foreigners allowed. And this shocked me. You know, coming from an American standpoint, I was like, wait, what? You excluding people based on their nationality slash ethnicity? I'm a little offended.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but like I had some like moral dilemma with that.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, well, you know, private residence, there's not much control I can have over it. But morally, I'm still uncomfortable. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, listening to that, what do you think? Like, what's your first impression?
I feel like I would laugh at it at first. I feel like that's my first reaction. It's like, you won't let me in? What? To the door like those little kids. Just, I would be annoyed. I would be mad. That would be why I'm laughing at it. Because I would deep down inside I'm mad. They told me.
So, like, oh, bless me.
Mm-hmm.
Bless me. Okay. So, I had a talk with my boyfriend who is Japanese about this. Bless me. And it was interesting, like, what he said. So, we ended up discussing that if people were rude, maybe that kind of explains why they would have like a non-foreigner policy, or the idea that because there's a military base there, right, that Okinawa people had a sense of needing a space for just Japanese people. But even with those examples of like reasoning, I still don't know if I would feel comfortable with such exclusions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we can circle back around to it. But I guess what we could do now, since I want to be fair, is to talk about like exclusions from community that we are more morally accepting of.
Mm-hmm.
So like the example that I thought of was like, and this is gonna make me sound so old, but back when there was movie rental places,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
children were excluded from like the porn section of the video store for good reason,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But that's like an example of an exclusion to a community for certain people. But for me, I feel like the key factor there is that, you know, children can grow up, children will become adults, and then those adults will then be accepted into that excluded community.
Okay.
So for me, I almost feel like there is a more accepting exclusion to community when it is only a temporary thing.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think that makes sense because at least you're giving people the chance, or at least they have the chance to eventually go into said area or space. So long as it's temporary, I think, like you said, we're more accepting of it. If it's permanent, something you can't change, for let's say, for example, your skin color, I guess that's an example from the South here in the U.S. You can't change that. So of course it's going to be very frustrating. in those types of events. They can't just become white. So
Yeah. Which, I mean, you bring up a really good, like, point there in that if it was clearly like what we would consider a majority group that's excluding what we would consider a minority group, that would be like a clear line that we would say that would be immoral, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious, do you think it matters either way, if it was majority or minority, if exclusion to community is morally okay?
Well, I guess right now you and I are speaking as what would be considered outsiders of that bar. So for us, it's morally wrong, I guess, or it leans that way if it isn't already there. But I would have to take a step back and think about what it would be like for those of us on the inside as well. What they would be thinking. If we were Japanese, what would we be thinking? You know, thank God there's no foreigners in here, for example. I remembered learning from a sorry, I don't know where it was, but it's something like having to do with military American guys and taking women and doing degradable stuff and stuff like that. So they wanted to say no more foreigners, meaning no more military men, because the military men were loud and aggressive, at least from what I remember the story being told. So we would probably feel safe in that bar, knowing that there's no allowed. For example, if we're talking about loud, crazy, obnoxious Americans or Brits, whatever the case may be. So would it be morally wrong for us on the inside? Probably not.
See, I guess I'd have to push back there a little bit in that situation, how can I say? If that was back in the time of like, after World War II, I think that's, that's an extreme case. But there are still those places now in like 2021 where the military, there's still a military base there, and there's still like a power dynamic between, Japan and America, but it's nothing like it used to be, right? So I almost feel like keeping it, though, there's a different reason on why it's still there. And I agree with you, like we need to think of their perspective, those people that are excluding the community. But like my significant other,
don't worry, it'll be bleeped out.
He brought up a similar idea of that, like, well, if a majority of the people that you're trying to get rid of are rude and like not healthy or not good for business, it makes sense to exclude them. But I would say, isn't that just stereotyping all of them to behave in that manner? You know what I mean? And that's where I think like the permanent versus temporary really comes into play. Like, I was kind of trying to play it through my head, right? Like if I go to a restaurant and they're like, your significant other, your boyfriend can come in, but you're probably gonna be loud. You can stay out. You know what I mean? Like that's really insulting. Like they don't know who I am. They don't know how I act. They're making interpretation of who I am based on something I can't control, which is my ethnicity / nationality. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, sorry, I'm still thinking on the side of the barkeeper who has to enforce that for whatever reason. They may not know you, but that could be the very reason why they still want to keep you out. Because they don't know what you're going to be like 2 drinks in, 3 drinks in, for example. They don't have time to sit in there in bed. Because I was actually wondering, what would the vetting process be if there was a vetting process? how would they vet the foreigners as to be someone that they feel safe allowing into their establishment? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I mean, like, I guess there are certain places where it's like you have to have a membership or have to know somebody to get in.
Mhm.
And I guess like having a recommendation from a friend, that could be some way. Like if you have a customer that already knows that person trying to get in and that they're chill, they're not gonna go rampaging through the place.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking, how would you vet that? Because I know it's thankfully no longer the time of World War II. We're not worried about drunk, angry soldiers running around with women, sometimes men, I guess. Yeah, 2021, okay? Progress. The point is, yeah, I think it's just a weird way of doing business. And I say weird because, again, where's that vetting process coming from? But you gave a good example.
mm.
I'm thinking of this place called a speakeasy. Do you know what a speakeasy is?
I've heard the term before, but like I don't know what it is.
So basically, speakeasies are these places where, kind of like you said, you have to know the right people to get in. You have to know the password. I think they're popular amongst hipsters, to be quite honest. But they go in and they have their password to get in, and then sometimes there might be like a secret room in the place, or something about it is very secretive, basically, and it's only for a select amount of people to go in. And then I don't know, I imagine drink coffee, listen to poetry. That's my imagination of it. I'm not exactly sure because I've never been in one, right? Snaps everywhere, snaps.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, I mean, I guess that also kind of leads into, I was trying to think of an example that happens in the US where it's like a place that is exclusive, but it's for permanent. It's permanent. There we are. There's the word.
Okay.
I mean, could you think of any? I know I like sent you the questions, but
Oh, no. So I don't know if this is a proper answer. I only had one because I was like, I'm gonna go in order of these questions. I'm such a nerd. So an example, I could think of two that I'm aware of. I don't know if they're what you're for, but permanent exclusion from community. I think of the Amish and then those who are a part of Scientology, and I put in little whatever these are called parentheses. Usually they're religious. So once you leave that community, you are banished from that community. And you are no longer allowed to speak to any family or friends. Sometimes family and friends will reach out, but they risk also getting excommunicated. So those are the only two that I can think of in the U.S.
yeah, and I mean, from a moral perspective, I think it gets a little bit difficult because it's a religion. So that's already dealing with their morals.
Yeah.
But it sounds like, from the example you gave, that it was more so a choice of a person within the community or a person that was already part of the community that made a decision that excommunicated them from said community.
Usually that's the case. Yeah.
I don't know what the rules are of like specifically for those religious groups on like getting into the community. Like, can you just like drive when you're 50 years old to the Amish community and be like, hey, you know what? I'm really thinking about the Amish lifestyle. Can I have like a pamphlet?
Oh my goodness. So at least for the Amish, what happens is they do give their people a chance to see the outside world or what they call the English world. I was obsessed with Amish stuff. But
did you get a pamphlet?
No, I thought I saw real honest people in real life walking down the it was some like subway or train or something like that. And my mom pointed them out to me. She's like, they're Amish. What does that mean, Mom? And she told us. And I thought it was so cool. I even kind of thought about going to visit the community, not to live there, but just to see. It sounded so peaceful. And I remember reading about it in a school textbook. It just sounded so nice. But anyways, what they do for their children around between the ages of 16 to 18 is they have what's called a Roomspringer. And that just means go out into the English world, experience it, and come back. And then you get the choice to make whether you want to stay or you want to go. And all the kids get this venture. So I really appreciate that aspect of it. It's not perfect, but I think that's a good one for someone who lived 16 to 18 years in only one way. You get the chance to go see what life is like in another way. I think that's pretty dope. So some people leave for that reason. Some people leave for other reasons. I'm trying to think for Scientology. I don't know much about Scientology, except for that they keep tabs on each other, almost like big brother. If someone snitches on you, basically, for not doing their commandments or something that you're supposed to be doing, you can get kicked out that way. So, as far as coming back into the community with the Roomspringer, you have that opportunity. I don't know if there's one for Scientology. So.
Yeah, I don't know about that Scientology one. I'd have to research more into it, but I think. So tell me if I'm wrong, but when we were going to college, right, there was a point in time where you would see kind of debates going around online. I don't know about if in the real world this was happening. Making centers at colleges that were only for POCs or like certain POCs. Do you remember this?
People of color? Is that what POC is?
Yeah.
I do remember that.
Okay, so this wasn't like, was this like something that you noticed in real life, or was this just all online?
For me, because I was becoming a recluse, I stayed in my room, but I noticed it online. Yeah.
So this actually, I feel like, brought up an interesting like point for the exclusion to community. Like, and I think it kind of plays into that majority minority, tussle, as well as like this permanent exclusion. First impressions, what do you think about like that sort of situation where there's like a club within a college that is only for people of color?
Well, being an insider and hearing their voices, what I understood it to be was that campus in that city was majority white people. If you look in the town around you, just look, you're naturally white. I mean, there's nothing we can do about it. Having that place for POC gave them a sense of comfort and just inclusion at this point. So if anything, from what I'm understanding, I could be wrong, but their goal was to find a place where POC could come together and be one with each other and just hang out and vibe, basically, without having to worry about I don't want to say white supremacy, because it wasn't really white supremacy, but white mentality is, I guess, probably the best way to put it. Because thinking of myself walking through a majority white campus, there are things that I noticed that it just made me uncomfortable. Not in a completely bad way, but I was just a little uncomfortable because I realized that I was a person of color, and there was so many white people compared to where we're from. So just a bit of a change in general.
Yeah.
So I had an experience, for example, where it was white girls that I was talking to, and I'm used to my POC experience, and no one was doing anything rude or wrong, but I noticed myself getting upset because I felt like their opinions were quote unquote white opinions. We were talking about hair. And I was explaining kinky, and for black people, kinky means black hair. But she's like, well, when I think of kinky, I think of this hair, and I felt myself get angry. No real reason why. I just got angry. I'm like, your interpretation of what kinky is not what kinky actually is. Okay, that's what I wanted to say. I didn't.
You were gonna give her a lecture. You whip out that whiteboard.
Well, there was another white girl in the group. There was 3 of us, so I couldn't say anything to get it back up. There was no backup for me. There was no other person of color who could say, yeah, or a black person, I should say, who would say, yeah, Ivana is right, Kinky means this. It's just a difference in ideology that I noticed. And it could rub people the wrong way sometimes, just because that's just naturally how we are as human beings. So I kind of went on a long-winded tangent there.
No, this is interesting. Keep going.
Oh, okay. Well, that's about all I have to say on that part. So that's just my guess of what it's like for trying to give them some more space for people of color in that college. So, yeah.
And I mean, like, I understand that. And I understand that, like, sometimes you just want to talk to people of an equal mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I get uncomfortable when there is like a hard and fast rule of excluding people from said group.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I think it's great that colleges have those clubs, right? And I think it's great to have an opportunity to meet up with people that are from a similar background or from a similar lived experience, or just sharing like ideas with people that might be from your community but share different ideas from you. Like, I think that's also, but because when that first came out, I guess I felt a little bit conflicted, because it felt like, people will say that white people don't understand, POCs enough. But then there's this club where you get an opportunity to like talk with people from like a different background than you. And then like there's this opportunity for white people to learn. You know what I mean? But then if you exclude them from it, it just kind of feels like it's exacerbating the issue. You're not giving them a chance to see or hear voices that maybe they wouldn't have heard otherwise. Am I making?
It makes sense.
Okay. Like, But as far as like, how can I say? Because I think, and tell me if I'm wrong here, it felt like the idea online for people to exclude non-POCs from the community was primarily due to this like worry that like non-POCs would just start flooding the community. And it would just be like a mini colonial like invasion. And that's the impression I got, but I might be wrong.
Well, I think we were open to people of color. Now, I can't speak for the Black BSU, the Black Student Union. It's a little bit different. But from the people of color union, I understood that we were open to having white people enter in, like you said, kind of just people who were of that thing. The only tidbit would be that we don't want them to feel like they're coming in and kind of doing the white savior thing. Like it happens in so many movies. The white people go into these POC areas, places in Africa, places in the US before we became the US. and just go in and think, oh, I'm here to save you. To go in and colonize and do all this crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as long as people didn't use their white power, I'll say, as long as they didn't use their white power against anybody and feel like they're entitled to speak out and have their opinions heard above everybody else's, they would be okay. Again, Black Student Union, slightly different, but at least for the grander branch of it all.
Okay, well now you got me curious about the Black Student Union. What's
well, you couldn't come to those meetings. Well, we did have certain meetings where at least once a month, if not a couple times a month, we would specifically ask that it be reserved only for Black students, purely Black students, not necessarily skin color, but you had to be Black to enter in that room for safety reasons. This is when all the shootings were happening against a lot of Black people in the communities, and so we needed a safe place to congregate and talk about our issues without anybody outside of the Black community. So it didn't matter whether you were Asian, unless you're Asian and Black. It didn't matter if you were white, unless you're white, Black, Latinx, unless you're Latinx and white. Strictly, it's Latinx and Black, excuse me. You strictly have to be Black to get into certain meetings. So that's what I mean by I can't speak fully for the Black Student Union because I know that we had our own thing going on.
Yeah. Wait, now I'm curious. Like, how strict were they on that? Like you, V, you're mixed race. So like, were they like, we're gonna have to take a blood test. We're gonna have to say like, are you more than like 50%?
Well, if they wanted to look it up, I actually am. I think 51%. I just made it. But yeah, no, we had people of lighter complexions with freckles and afros. We had half Black, half white. We had half Black, half Asian. So I wasn't the only ambiguous one at the table, thankfully. Not that it would be a problem if I wasn't, but yeah.
Okay. So I mean, for that club, the Black Student Union, those meetings, they were once a month, you said?
Something like that. It was either once or twice a month. I don't remember exactly. But
so then every other day, wait, I guess I don't understand about like, did the Black Student Union have like a place, like an office?
Not a set place, no.
No.
We were just kind of moving around.
Were there people that were like not Black that were part of the Black Student Union?
I want to say there was like one person, but I could be wrong. I want to say it was a white person, but I think I might be wrong.
Just one. Our ambassador.
Yeah. Alright.
Oh, interesting. So I don't know. Hearing that, I don't get so much of a knee-jerk reaction because it seems like it's not like a permanent thing. Again, there's like opportunities for like some type of commingling, even if it was just with one. So for me, like morally speaking, I don't see that so much as like an issue. I guess for me, it's only like when it comes to like permanence of like non-negotiable exclusion. I don't know, but that's how I'm gonna end my thoughts on that. But what about for you?
I feel like I talked too much, so I don't know how to end it. But I did.
I liked your input.
Oh, well, thank you. I feel less boring. Yeah. No, I think I'm good. I think I've talked out all I could on the subject. I mean, I do think it's interesting that there are two different types of exclusion, as you said, both temporary and permanent. I never thought of it that way. I feel like that every time I step into conversations and you're leading it, that you kind of lead with a very interesting input. I'm like, oh, I never thought of it that way. So I like it. Maybe I like it. Sorry, I had to do that. It came into my head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it does matter whether it's going to be temporary or whether it's going to be permanent. And it's interesting that you and I are on different sides of the coin. So if you're looking at it as being an outsider, as an American, a white female American, and I'm looking at it as a Blasian female American. And we've had our different experiences, both being on the inside of the group and being put on the outside of the group.
Mm.
I just hope that you guys really enjoy this content and like share your experiences too, if you have any that you share. Again, please no porn comments. We get enough of those. Otherwise, you guys are good. I'm good. Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good. Just like as the V said, like this is like an open conversation. Like we don't have set answers, and we're just more like wanting to start a dialogue in order to kind of like, I don't know, brainstorm these ideas. So yes, any comments would be interesting as long as, like V said, it's not porn. And thank you guys for listening. So goodbye, fellow humans.
Bye. Here we go.